Welcome to Curator Conversations, a monthly series where we'll ask a local curator or arts organizer to pick an artist that they enjoy chatting with. You'll get to hear all about their work, and it'll also give you a chance to hear more about the absolutely incredible arts community that we have here. Tonight, we have Ciera McKissick, an independent writer, curator, cultural producer, and founder of AM/FM, joined by Erin LeAnn Mitchell, an artist, educator, and Birmingham, Alabama native who received her Bachelor's of Fine Art and Master's of Art education here in Chicago. I'm so thrilled to be sharing some space with you both tonight and for the rich conversation that you all are about to have. Be sure to keep an eye on the chat box. Throughout the conversation, I'll be dropping some links of their work in there. And of course, feel free to pop any questions or comments that you might have for Ciera or Erin into that chat as well. That is all from me. I will turn it over to you, Ciera.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be in conversation with such a dear friend, Erin. Can I just say first off, like how proud I am of you and all of the strides that you've made since our little residency at AM/FM. Thank you so much for being in conversation with me. Yes.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for having that space for me to make it to this point, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, those days really were some of the times of our lives. Definitely, it was such a time and slice in my life, specifically being able to open up a space and offer space for other people to be able to come in, create ideas, incubate. So for people who don't know, I ran a gallery called AM/FM, and we opened maybe about 3 years ago, and we were open for about 2 years, and it was a 1,000 square foot space that operated as a gallery, operated as a venue, and also a studio space for artists to be able to have a space to work on their own, bring their ideas to fruition. And Erin was one of our resident artists who had a desk space in the space and was able to create a lot of exhibitions and work. I remember coming in like late at night or like being there, and she would just be tinkering away at her desk with all of her different tools and stuff like that. So it was definitely a very artistic hub for emerging artists in the city. A lot of the work that I do works with emerging artists, and specifically I'm trying to remember how you came to be a resident artist. I'm trying to remember if I asked you or if you were looking for a space. I think you were really trying to get out of your home studio and like get somewhere and be able to work outside of that space.
Yeah, I was in my first year of teaching, and I was looking to get back into making my own work. And I hadn't been making my own work for years at that point, really. And so making this work with my students, I was just like, I want to make my own stuff. And I was just making like teacher samples, which are cool, but like I really wanted to dive into my own work and do my own thing. And so you had a space and I was like, hey, can I get some of that space I needed? Because I was just really working on the floor in my room and making like lap size work there, but like that wasn't conducive because as a teacher, you're working like when you're in school and when you're out of school, your job really doesn't stop. You're working around the clock, and I needed to have somewhere separate from where I was just like coming home and would just crash after work. Like I needed somewhere else to go so I could not crash.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the case for like a lot of artists working out of their home and needing a space to be able to incubate ideas, get messy, make mistakes, make large scale work. And I really would just love to know how having a studio space, especially after teaching and wanting to return back to your work, how did that impact your mental space? How did that impact your work and the things that you were creating? I think back then, the work has changed so much, and we'll get into that, but I would just love to see how it affected you.
So having the space really it just separated the routine that I had been in with school, because like I would wake up and get ready to go to school, be at school majority of the day, then maybe spend some time after school doing whatever I need to wrap up or prepare for the next day. And then I'd go home and then that would just be it. Like by that time I would be out of all types of energy, completely exhausted. And on top of like just being at home, I didn't have that space to be messy, like you said, and like really work the way I wanted to, because, you know, you got to get that security deposit back. So having that space, it really allowed me, like, it put me in a situation where it switched up my routine, and it made me dedicate time to putting into my own work. Because if I was like working in this other space, then I had another area that I could keep my work in. I couldn't just, you know, be like, oh, it's at home and then never touch it. Like I actually have to go somewhere and put that energy into like going to that place and, you know, bringing out the materials that I have, my new materials, or just being in a space with other people. That mainly really was the thing too, because at home, like, I mean, I lived with like a friend who was an artist, but she was also a teacher, and like she wasn't making any of her own work at the time. So having a space where there were people who were actively making their own work was really beneficial in me getting myself together so I could do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, would you say that your background as a teacher or an educator impacts your work at all, or how were you able to navigate moving between those two worlds? I know that you were teaching art, and oftentimes working artists have to work or be teaching artists in order to make money and like get by as well, but sometimes the practice can suffer. So I would just love to learn how you were able to maneuver those two worlds and navigate, and what your relationships were like with your students. Like, I can't remember, what grade were you teaching?
I was teaching K through 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a very wide span. And so, I mean, it was really cool. It was separate, but also kind of like connected, because, you know, I'm making teacher samples so I can like have examples ready for the kids. But I'm also like digging in my own work because I want to show them what I made and what I'm about and things like that. And they were just like blown away. They were like, what, you made this? Well, I don't believe you. And so it's just like, I'd be making things with them. And the things that I make had absolutely like really nothing to do with what I wanted to do with my own, but it got me back in the process of just like using like art materials again and thinking in different ways of using them, or like kind of repurposing things, because teachers don't have budgets to do a lot of things with. So that got me, you know, really in a kind of like word I'm looking for. I don't know, I just really had to make stuff up out of nothing a lot of times, and then that got my mind like turning and stuff. So I feel like it was really helpful in that sense, more so than like actually directing what I wanted to make, like the content of what I wanted to make, just in getting myself in this realm of like using things that I wouldn't normally use, and materials that I hadn't touched in a while.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that in your work, and like the materials that you use, you repurposing things for like stamps, or like using circle for tops and stuff. So I can definitely see how that was incorporated into your practice. Yeah. And I also, like I said, the work has changed a lot. Like back when we were at the gallery and whatnot. And since then you've moved to Birmingham, so you're no longer in Chicago. And I would just love to have some insight about what that move back home was like, and being able to, I know you turned kind of a shed space into your studio space, so you had a space of your own, and it was a return back to home after being in Chicago for like 10 plus years, I think it was, because you came to go to school at the School of the Art Institute. Yeah, and that's such a stark difference. You're going back to the South, you're going back to Birmingham. What was that like for you?
I know when I left, I said that I didn't want to come back. It was not my intention to come back. I was like, I'm never coming back to this place. But when I came back, it actually like, I came back like right on time. It was actually what I needed to do. Because after I left Chicago, I floated around. I was in DC for a little bit. I spent some time in New York. I was just kind of like seeing art elsewhere, because when I was in Chicago, I didn't have that opportunity to do that. And so, and I also couldn't work in those spaces either. Like I couldn't really work in DC. I couldn't work in New York. I didn't have space for that. So coming home was where I was able to, take everything that I had seen and stuff and like really think about what I wanted to do and like dig deep into what I wanted to get into. And the shed space, oh, I love my shed space. I kind of miss my shed space because I don't work in my shed space like I used to. But I mean, also I'm kind of happy I don't because it's very much outdoors and I don't have like any type of like, air conditioning and we're in the South and stuff. And
it was Birmingham and it was hot. I was saying, to be fair, it was nicer than Chicago weather. So.
No, very, very, very much. It was way nicer than Chicago. I would never try that in Chicago. But it was like, I love that space because it was, I mean, I definitely could turn around in it, but it was like I was in a shell, like I was in my own little cocoon and I was making all these works and stuff. And the works would be like 5 by 5 feet. They would be almost like I think it was like a 10 by 10. It's a 10 by 10 shed. So I'm like making 5 by 5 foot works in a 10 by 10 shed. And I'm like, everything is like in reaching realm. It was perfect. And, but I still needed more space. Of course, artists always need more space. You can never have enough space. And I think I made some really, really, really cool works in that space. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the switch coming back to Chicago, I mean, like I said, I didn't think I would ever want to come back, but when I did come back, a lot of good things have happened to me being home, honestly. And I think like my work takes on a different meaning coming from here than being Alabama artist in Chicago. So.
Yeah, I feel like it's a situation where Chicago is so ubiquitous and there's so many artists, and you were able to kind of go back home to Birmingham and carve out a space for yourself. Like I remember seeing you doing like festivals on the street and like being able to put your art up in that. There was also a really big award ceremony that you got to be part of where you got to present the piece to Angela Davis. Like, how did you get involved in that project? And what was it like to meet someone of that caliber and like make work about them and hand it over to them?
Well, I mean, it only would have happened here in Birmingham, really. As you know, like Dr. Angela Davis is from Birmingham, and I have a friend who's working with the city, and because of the situation that happened with the Civil Rights Institute and them kind of reneging on the Fred Shuttlesworth Awards that they were, had originally presented or said that they wanted to present to Dr. Davis, the city decided they were going to make their own ceremony for her because she's well deserving of it. And so my friend who's part of the board, there was like, hey, I have like a dope homie that makes work and her work can be the award for her. And I was just like, oh, I just happened. it really just came together like that. And when she hit me up, I was like, what? I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Like, what? She's like, so we're gonna ask you to do a piece for Angela Davis. And I was like, okay. She's like, yeah, so it's coming up like February. I was like, okay. And I just heard about that story too. And so I was just like, oh, this is like everything. And I was really excited to meet her, be a part of that. She has a piece of my work. Like, what? It's still a situation where I'm just like, yeah, that really happened. Like, that's pretty cool. And we're both from Birmingham. Like, yeah, come on. Like, it couldn't have been anything better. It was just everything. It was perfect how that worked out.
Yeah, definitely. And there's another famous artist that's from Birmingham, Carrie James Marshall is from that area. And you have a piece in the museum in Birmingham right now, alongside artists like him and also Migueline Thomas and whatnot. And it's your first major museum exhibition or having a piece, and they actually own the piece as well.
Yes, it will be a part of their permanent collection, which is an even greater thing because the piece that is in there is very much about Birmingham. So I'm glad that it has a home there now.
Yeah. And I think that And going back to like how your style has shifted, back when you were in Chicago and you were making work, a lot of it was painting, illustration as well. And you've really shifted into this different space where you're working with textiles and like fiber materials. And you were kind of inching towards that. I remember we did the Black Sauce show at EMM, and you were making some text pieces with textiles. But why would you say that your work evolved in that direction? And what was it like for you to completely try something new? And what was the impetus for the shift in style?
Well, it really wasn't new, to be honest, and it wasn't a shift. It was just something that I had never like either like went back to, because when I was in college, I was like doing fiber and material classes, and I was doing like repeat printmaking on fibers and using fibers like pretty often. But when I got out of college, I didn't have that facility to do like large scale screen printing on fabric or dye and do all that type of stuff. So that's how it kind of fell off.
Yeah.
And with how supplies cost and things like that, like it was just cheaper to just get paper and paint, and I could do that, and it was quick, it was easy, and it didn't take up space either, because with fabric, you gotta accumulate so much of it that, especially now, I'm seeing how much fabric I had no space for that then.
Yeah.
So as time went on and I got, the space to do so, it definitely crept back in. And I'm really glad it did, because it was a part of my practice back then that I really liked. It was something that I had never done prior to going to being at SEIC at college. So I had missed it, and I wanted it to come back, and it just crept right back in just that quickly.
No, and I'm definitely glad that it did, because I feel like it's really elevated the work, and you're able to kind of go back to the origins of like quilting and whatnot. Artists like G's Ben Collective and Faith Ringgold and whatnot, where they're literally weaving stories into the work. And I would love to know like what kind of stories lie beneath the work that you create. I know specifically you made some really pivotal and important pieces about trans women also, and having their names stitched in images as well. And a lot of them you have to look really closely to get the details, and like they're very, very intricate. So I would love to know more about what types of stories you're instilling in that, and how you're able to connect with Black roots and history in the sense of quilt making.
Yeah, that piece that you're mentioning, it's called Morning Shroud, and it's basically like this figure that kind of looks like an angel, and it has it's holding like this shroud that's covering a mirror, and on the mirror all the faces like kind of really like tethered. It's not even a full image, not a crisp image of their face, so they're kind of like withered away type of thing, of all these women, Black girls, Black women, Black trans women who have been killed in the past like couple of years, a few years, predominantly southeastern area. It came around the same time that I did the piece that's in the museum here called Imperishable Stars. That one was specifically for a little girl that was murdered in the city, Camille Cupcake McKinney. And so when that happened, I started that piece. And as I was making that piece, I kept coming across like all these different stories of other little girls like missing, and like just really just upsetting situations where all these like young little girls, like under 10 and things, just like gone or taken somehow, or like never heard of again. And then of course like trans women being killed and their stories not having any type of end to them or resolve, and Black women in general. And so it's just like all of this is happening at the same time that Cupcake was murdered. Like another hometown girl, Anaya Blanchard, she also ended up missing. I think she was like a month apart from Cupcake. So it was just a lot happening at the same time, and it was just, of course, being a Black woman, it's just like, what is going on? And a lot of this wasn't getting as much attention as I felt that it should have. And so I ended up making like a mini series of works that all pertain to that situation. one starting with Imperishable Stars, and then the one that I mentioned, Morning Shroud, that includes trans women and other older Black women who had gone missing and their stories hadn't received any type of nationwide like attention or anything for that matter. So yeah, I was also, you know, using quilting as a way to tell stories, and I'm thinking about, you know, messages being woven in them, and it being like a Southern thing in my head. I see that as a very Southern thing, like my grandmother, it's something that's around. I think, yeah, I really want to take care and really put a lot of story was that I wanted to tell with that, because like I said, it really wasn't getting much attention. A lot of these stories that I wanted to bring into the work wasn't getting attention. So I wanted to be really intentional of how I was presenting it and what all I wanted to put in and how I wanted to put it together. And it was a therapeutic experience, I'll say, to go through it. I mean, it's difficult being around grief, you know, and that was at the end of 2019. So then we kick up 2020, and then we're in this whole, I know, I was like, well, you know, here we are. And so then it like a roller coaster. It was just like, and then it's just like, whoa, now we're in this whole like sea of grief, and it's just never ending. And it was a lot. I think I'm glad that I was able to produce that work. And I took on, you know, I took some inspiration from Terry Marshall as well, and some of his work, a particular series called We Mourn Our Loss. And I used that phrase in a lot of the work that I made that, you know, still dealt with those stories. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, it still is a lot, honestly. But it's just crazy how that started, and it just kind of like fell into all of these other things and all these other stories now added to what I'd already, you know, had been starting.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful way to kind of honor women and empower them in a way. Also, like a lot of your work features women, they're very striking, they're very powerful, and really exude essentially what I feel that you exude. Like you're like this amazing artist woman who is just out there and like doing the thing, like essentially, and being able to really put on for women in that way. I don't see a lot of men in your work in general. I think maybe the cookout was kind of probably some of the first images of men. Is that intentional for you? Do you wish to push women to the forefront?
Oh yes, I definitely wish to push women to the forefront, but I see the figures in the cookout as androgynous. I don't see them as men. I've had people ask me like, why don't you paint men? I'm like, you can find another artist that paints men. I don't paint men.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't, it interests me. Okay.
There's a men who get painted.
Thank you. I think there's plenty. You can go find them anywhere. Like that's enough. And isn't the world enough for you? Can I have my art be about women? So yeah, I paint women.
Yeah.
And it's about women.
Yeah.
Or it's an androgynous situation. It's not. I don't want. If it's not women, then I don't want it to be men. At the end of the day, not to say that I will never, but you know, that's not my targeted audience.
Yeah, and I think that's true too, like about sort of the pigmentation. They're Black women specifically, and they don't always appear to be Black. You can tell by their features and whatnot, but I think that the coloration that you use is also very interesting. Like it seems like you have a blue motif that's been going on continually throughout your work. And I remember the pieces that were in Black Sauce and how from there you shifted into doing these performance pieces where you would paint yourself blue also and pose within these scenes and sets.
I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, can you talk a bit about that and like why you choose to represent them in that way and how you use color to talk about shading and like race?
Well, I was using blue because have you heard the song of what I can't even say it right now. It's by Fats Waller. It's like, what did I do to be so black and blue?
Yeah, so black and blue. Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, and so I was like, well, I don't. Again, being like inspired by Care James Marshall, he has those very like notable black figures that he uses, and I was just like, well, I admire him, but I don't want to do black figures like him. So I was like, where can I find my own kind of like niche to where like what figures, if I were to, make something be like, oh, those are Erin LeAnn Mitchell figures. And so I'm just like, well, he did black, I'm gonna do blue. And so I really got into blue, not to add, I mean, I really like blue, but I was just like, yeah, I think as black women, we have to take a whole bunch of crap, like, and it's just like internalize that. And it's just like, yeah, or at least me, at least, like, I'm just like, yeah, I have to put up with a whole bunch of stuff I don't want to. And if I were to, look how I feel sometimes, then maybe I would be blue. And so I was like, yeah, they're gonna be blue. But I also, I mean, like you said, when I was doing black stuff, I made them all different types of colors. So I'm not limited to that, but I think it was really, it meant a lot to make them blue, particularly in that series that I did, because I don't think I've done many blue figures since that series, honestly. And I think that's just because I wanted to get away from grief. I think we were surrounded by enough of it, and I didn't want to keep making work in it, because then it just brought me down more. And there's only so much you can put, you can be in that and around it day in and day out, like just in the news, and then going into your workspace, which is supposed to be like kind of the separation from that, where you find like a safe haven. And I feel like it was still around me, and I didn't want to be around it. I didn't want to really think about it or talk about it anymore, because that had been enough. So I really wanted to start changing that and shifting it, and dreaming, and thinking of other, other realities that existed out of that.
Yeah,
The reality of grief around us. Yeah.
I love that. And I'm in this like women's group that meets once a month sometimes, and we often talk about what we're thinking about and what we're dreaming about. And you talking about these alternate realities and like ethereal ideas, like what would you say that you're dreaming or thinking about right now in reference to your work, if you're trying to move outside of the space of grief, which we are very much still in right now, like an unearthing of it all? Like, what are you dreaming about?
I'm dreaming of like other spaces. I definitely have like leaned on Sun Ra, another like Birmingham native, which I think I really want to be intentional about the people who I'm like, inspired by, and bring up Birmingham, because nobody knows about Birmingham. No one cares about Alabama. The only thing you hear about Alabama are really negative things. Alabama does a really good job, like, putting itself in the media in all the wrong ways. And honestly, the South in general. So I was like, yeah, space is the place, and finding space and being space is like what Black people need, or people of color all in general, like space to, fully be our authentic selves, and to thrive, and to not be victims of white supremacy that is, constantly around us. So I'm thinking of, other realms in that way, and just alternate realities of like, if that didn't exist, or where could we, be ourselves, and what would that be like, or if things were completely different. I, watched Face to Place, and then some it's like Make a Joyful Noise, I believe, or A Joyful Noise. It's a documentary on Sun Ra. And if you're not familiar, Sun Ra's Face to Place being made in like the 1970s, and it's basically like synopsis of the story is that,
I said amazing, like out of this.
Oh yeah, it is. It's very amazing. Synopsis is that he is this agent from outer space who's like is coming and using his music to transport Black people and allies and such to other places that are outside of this world, with like all of its like I don't want to say sins, but basically all the things that we know the world to be in terrible ways. So I'm thinking about that, like me doing that with my art. And so how can like I transport people into this other space to where they're not thinking of what's around us day in and day out, and they're thinking of like different spaces where they can just feel other things than grief and I know sorrow and just the things that again that we're inundated with every day.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. I'm looking at the piece that's directly behind you. Like it seems very celestial, and I can see the influence of moving into that other kind of world. Like those figures that are with the swirls and things that are laying down remind me of like Belkis Ayan, the Cuban printmaker, and how she worked with their eyes and their figures. And like really this is a totally different style that you're moving into now outside of the work that we've been seeing, always shifting, shape shifting, like definitely moving through. And I would just love to hear about you working with this new medium. You've also been working a lot with spray paint as of late, and how has that like shifted your practice and evolved the work as well? Like it's a quick medium also.
It is a quick medium because I wanted to make work faster. But
Yeah.
and honestly, I'm not making work faster because I'm still taking my time and being very meticulous with it because I don't know, I'm Virgo. I just have to. It has to be a certain way.
Yes.
But I will say that like it makes me relinquish some control because like once it's down, and like you can do what you can to cover it up, but like it's happened. So deal with it.
Yeah.
And so that is helpful in that way. So now I'm not, I kind of have relinquished control in that, and I'm just kind of working freely and just rolling with the punches, basically. Like if that happens, okay, how can we turn that into something else? Or, it is what it is, and just work with it. But I've really been enjoying experimenting with spray paint and yeah, because I hadn't before. And so now I'm like mixing like just acrylic paint, spray paint, fabric, and then all these other like embellishments on top of everything. And who knows what I'll add next, honestly. Anything that glimmers and shines and catches my eye.
Yeah, no, I definitely can see like the work that goes into it. There's the piece that was shown at Kravitz Welby, the blue piece. Was it Kravitz Welby? But it's the one with the water and like the beading and like the buttons and everything on it were so meticulous. Like thinking about the time and labor that went into that, a labor of love, definitely, and how you are working so slowly is important. I think that it's important to take our time and like, especially in a world that is so quick paced and moving constantly, and especially being a Black woman and being asked to do so much and like carrying so much of it. Do you find that your work is like a cathartic experience, or like what is the feeling that comes from you when you're working on a piece? Are you thinking about something ahead of time to make, or like you said, you're relinquishing control, or you're just like seeing what happens?
A little bit both. I know and it's funny you say like like the amount of work being made, because it's like one of the things is that comparing yourself to others who like bust out things like this, like every time you're on Instagram it's just like something new out, and it's just like I'm still working on this for like 2 months, like what, I'll never have that much. But I'm also just like really being more patient with myself and understanding that like at the end of this I'm happier with having multiple quality pieces that I feel very strongly about than like a plethora of like so pieces that I just threw together really quickly because of an amount that I had to, I had to make.
Yeah.
So even actually last night I was working on this one. I was like, what am I next? I'm always like collecting images that inspire me and stuff, and so little sketchbooks. I don't like sketchbooks, but I'm trying to like do better a little bit. I had to really draw me to them, and just I'll flip through that, and I'll have ideas and things of that nature, and I'll be like, okay, it'll usually come to like, okay, because at times when I'm finishing something, I'm just like, I don't know what I'm about to do or how this is gonna like translate into another work, but they ultimately speak to one another.
Yeah.
And it just really ends up flowing in that way. And you just have to trust the process really at the end of it.
Yeah, that's so true. I love watching kind of your Instagram stories and seeing like the through line behind like I know when you're working on a piece because it's just like thing after thing and they all build upon each other and like seeing how your mind and stuff work in a linear fashion. I also want to talk about representation. So you're also represented now by Kravitz Welby Gallery, and I would love to hear about how that has catapulted your career, how that has impacted things for you as well. I think being represented is a different space than being an independent artist as well, and especially a New York gallery that works with a lot of artists, like different levels, different calibers, and what that relationship was like for you and how it kind of shifted things.
Yeah, it's really funny because after I left Chicago and I went to New York right after Chicago, and I was just visiting all the gallery spaces and institutions that, you know, I never had time to see and dip into. And Kravitz Welby was actually one of the ones I went into, not even knowing, just like stumbled in and it was just like, oh, you know, this is pretty cool and stuff. I didn't meet anybody while I was there. I just remember, I do vividly remember like that space because once I went home, I was in Birmingham by then, and I was making work, just hoping, I don't know what I was doing, I don't know, just walking in faith and posting stuff up, and I got reached out to them by them on Instagram, and they were just like, hey, we like your stuff, like, you want to see if we can do something together? And I was like, first of all, are you even real? Like, who is this person? And just like, you know, because you gotta, you know, on the internet, anybody can be a
like
gallery.
slide it
Like,
into
oh, your work, whatever. And so, you know, I did my Googling and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I literally walked into this space and had no idea. And now they're like, just in my DMs type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so from then, I spoke to gallery owners who are awesome people, really happy to be connected with them, and really easygoing, just all for, you know, the better of my career, good to talk to, just other than just like, you know, pricing and things like that, like really just talking about, you know, the direction of the work and all those fundamental things. So I felt really nourished in being with them, and I felt like it was a good step to, you know, align myself with them moving forward. So yeah, we started with one piece, and he was just like, you know, we'll see how it goes with this one. And then like by the end of that year, I had the blue piece that you mentioned that was in water baptism. They had put me in it was I can't think. It was a group show with Yale. I think it's Yale students. I'm not sure. I think it's like, I'm drawing a blank at this point. But anyway, that was my first time like showing there, and it was awesome. And that was my first time doing like that large of a piece, which was like a 5 by 5 foot painting. Before that, the largest I think I did was like a 36 by 48.
Yeah.
So he was just like, so yeah, you're gonna need to do a 5 by 5 foot painting. And I was like, okay. And so I was just like freaking out really. But I was just like, he told me when the show was gonna be, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I gotta do this. I gotta do like this stuff. And I did it. And it was nothing. Like I was just like, I don't know why you haven't been working this big before, and now I don't work really smaller than that. Honestly, that's just like my standard size. So like, ta-da! So I mean, I really like, I do appreciate him for that, because otherwise, I don't know if I would have like pushed myself to go that big. I at that time, I didn't see myself pushing myself that far and seeing what that could be like. But yeah, like it's been a great relationship, honestly, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the other things that we're able to get into together.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing it too. Looking forward to seeing you in like a fair or something like that. Like it's coming
What?
for sure. Once we can have fairs again. And like speaking of scale and size, I know that this past summer you did like probably the biggest piece that you've done before, like a mural. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, what was that like shifting and like working on that large of a scale, and kind of how did you lay out did you work like projecting it onto the wall and like painting as you went, or was it piecemeal together?
Yeah, I have to shout out Living Walls in Atlanta because they definitely helped me with that. They work like with muralists and people who aren't muralists, and that really was the thing that gave me a lot of relief because they approached me about it and I was like, yeah, this is pretty dope. And I was like, I don't do like murals though. Like this isn't what I do. But the funny thing is that when I came back to Birmingham, I was just like, these are things before I leave, I want to do a mural. And that was like my first thing. I was like, I have to leave my mark in the city because I'm not staying here. Bro, I have to, before I leave, I have to do this. And it just happened. Like literally, they just came up and just like, you want to do this mural? And I was just like, yeah, I want to do a mural. And so I like sent a sketch for it's in Inslee, which is a predominantly like Black neighborhood, and sent in a sketch. They projected it, and that's how we like got it all laid out. And actually, that's when I really had my first experience working with spray paint. And so really it was like that part where I was just like, I'm gonna need some more spray paint.
Yeah.
See where this happens. See where this goes. So yeah, it was really cool. Great people to work with. I had an awesome time doing it, and thank goodness because literally we finished it like right before COVID hit. Like
Yeah.
literally, like it was like I think we were supposed to have a big ceremony to like just kind of amp it up in the neighborhood and stuff. And I think that was supposed to be like March 16th or something. Like it was literally around that time, and at the same time my work Imperishable Stars was opening in the museum. And like just like that, everything was shut down. Like Imperishable Stars was never seen until, I don't even know what, I don't know, time doesn't exist, but it was a long time. So yeah, and all that stuff happened at the same time. Yeah, and so I was just like, what's going on? Like those are two really huge things, and like all of a sudden the world stopped. And so I was just like, okay, so what happens now?
Yeah.
But it was a really, really great experience.
No, I definitely want to talk. I know we've got questions coming up soon, but I think I'm really curious about how 2020 and like everything stopping, but then everything kind of bubbling over at the same time. I think a lot of Black artists were really faced with a lot of people reaching out to them like for opportunities. Like it's still happening now. People really wanted to spotlight and highlight or like buy Black art or support Black art, also in the midst of people being abused and like berated in society. Like what was it like for you during that time, and how were you able to pause and just put it into the work if you did? Like what kind of experience were you going through during that time?
It was a blur. Entire blur. Like I wanted to work. I really wanted to work, but like the work was not working for me at all. Like I made something, and actually I now you say that I'm gonna post it, but it was really depressing. Yeah. It wasn't bad, but it was just like I wanted to make work so bad, but it just was not connecting. And I didn't feel like really strongly about it. And like I don't know, it just seemed like there wouldn't be a time where I could feel that kind of like feeling that I get when like I'm on track and like I know what I want to do and I'm like my wheels are moving and things. Like I really felt like I was in a whole standstill, and I didn't know because like you're at home, you can work, you can do this. I was just like, but how can I work when literally I'm just like everybody's like it's just news, like it's all that news that we were like being fed day in day out. You're just like, what is going on? What's about to happen to everybody? Like how can I work when I don't even know if I can show this work or sell it for that matter? Who's gonna buy it and with what money and stuff? And so it's just like. Yeah, I would like to say that I made a lot of stuff that I really didn't make a lot of stuff. I was just surviving. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not mad at that. I mean, I survived. We all survived.
You did.
So,
yeah.
So I think now that and I don't even want to use the word normal anymore, but like I guess we're gaining some type of traction to some type of new. No, I don't even want to say new. I don't know. It's weird. I don't like using words like that anymore. But
Yeah.
it's coming back now. Like
Yeah.
it's like it's coming back to me in a way. But yeah, during that time, it was it was a whole limbo. Really, it was. And I don't know. Like again, I'm thinking, but it's just kind of like reliving a nightmare almost. It's like I don't want to go back to that space because, like, again, nothing was connecting, and it was enough just to like make it day to day.
Yeah, to make it through, like adapt and change. And I think that
Mhm.
there's a question from Michael that I was definitely curious about as well too. He says, I'm curious about how you mentally prepare to move away from grief and trauma, a huge part of the Black experience. How do you compartmentalize and stay in a healthy space?
Mm. That's interesting because I feel like you really can't get away from it. Like even if I want to separate or compartmentalize it, I couldn't do that because it's just it's just something that's always around and something that you have to be aware of, even just looking in the mirror. Like, people wake up and think that they'll make it home that day, but they don't because they're Black or something. So it's just that I want to think just positively. I mean, that it's just finding that space outside of that because I'm very much aware of it. I feel like it's like people were very aware of it, but you can't, just live your life in that every day. You still have to get up and continue. Mm-hmm. And so it's just being that and being like, well, I was given this gift for a reason. And now that I've made this work on grief, I want to make something that stands and speaks to, our existence outside of that. Because it is a big part of it, but there's so much more to Black people than just our grief and our sorrow than that. So I think thinking in that and being like, this is my purpose and living my purpose in that way really kind of helped me get past that series that I was doing. And I also just put it away and got it out of my sight. That was also helpful.
Yeah, no, that's true. You have to like hold space for it, but also you can't hold on it too tightly, otherwise you'll drown in it as well.
You will drown in it, yeah.
And just thinking about you being in the South as well too, like how has that impacted like the Black experience and like what you're dealing with and how you put that into your work?
I think it makes me more of a badass because I'm like I'm in the thick of it. Like I'm in like I don't want to say anything, but I'm like in that part of the world that's like very much not for progress. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Alabama, I feel like Alabama is determined to work backwards, like consistently, like work backwards. So the work that I make is like completely against that backwards thinking. And that's why I'm just like, I feel like I have more power here than I would in like a Chicago or like a DC or a New York, because like, not to say that those problems don't exist there. It's just like, it's not like the root of it. It's not, where, in my opinion, like it all kind of started in those areas or where it's been really persistent at. So that's why I've been like, me being here and maybe even 2020 keeping me here is been, part of my purpose and really pushing this work that is outside of that and kind of confronts those around. It's definitely things that people around here have not seen. So that's a big thing. So that's why I'm like, it has more purpose here. And me being here has a bigger purpose.
Yes, no, you definitely have a bigger purpose. And I would love to, in our last couple of minutes, like what's next for you? Like what do you have on the horizon? I know that you were just named the Honey Jack Artist of the Year. Like congrats on that. Like that's amazing. I remember I was think we talked about this before. We would, try to get the RSVP to go to the
Did you RSVP?
I hope you did. Like, let's go out. And now you're the host. So yeah, what's next for you? What are you looking forward to for the rest of like 2021?
I want my work to move around the country. Like, since I don't have any plans to move as much as I used to at this point, I at least want my work to be in different places so other people can see it, and definitely, still hold space here. But yeah, actually, probably be in Chicago again soon, and possibly New York. So a lot of things. I'm not putting in any limitations on myself. I think the sky's the limit, and there are a lot of opportunities out there for me that I'm not even privy to at this point, that will probably like come at me as soon as I get off of this camera. But I'm like really excited and looking forward to all of them. And I'm just going to continue to work, because honestly, it's that persistence that's going to bring those to me.
Yeah, I feel like you're always working. Like every time I see you online, like you're always working. Are you like solely doing art for yourself right now? Is that like your job?
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a full-time artist.
Yes.
Great work. It's Erin LeAnn work, because I be working.
Yes.
That's my work.
What is it like to be able to solely just work for yourself? And was that like was it a fear for you to move into that space, or was it just a natural progression?
I knew when I was little that I didn't want to be at a job. I remember like getting out of school early and be like, this is the life. Like, I don't ever want to be in these other places, but I want to be out and free to do what I want to do. Like, I remember being like, I don't want to. But yeah, this is like, honestly, I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful that I've been able to like do this and hold this, like be a full-time artist up until this point. Because it was literally like just out on a leap of faith type of thing. I had no idea what was gonna happen, and I didn't know if I would have to go back to teaching, because I just couldn't maintain, and I didn't have any type of support in that way. But like, yeah, it's been awesome. You don't work a day in your life. That's a lie. Like, like you said, I'm always working. There's so much work. It's a lot of work. I do love the work, but it is work. It is work, because you have to do everything for yourself. Like, really, you do. So, I mean, but again, it's the work that I love to do, that I'm excited to get up to do. And again, so grateful that I'm like, this is what I do. Really, I am.
Yes, I think that's the truest form, where like when you're working for yourself, like the hours mean something different to you. You're willing to just like work and put yourself completely immersed in it. So like I said at the beginning of this talk, like I'm so proud of you, and just really glad to have seen the progression, and I can't wait. It's only up from here. It's only up, and space is the place. I'm so excited to see your place in this orbit. So thank you so much for chatting with me tonight, and just being who you are.
This was fun.
Yes. I'm excited to see you in Chicago too soon. So
I know. I can't wait to be back. I do miss Chicago.
yeah, yes. Chicago misses you too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. A massive thank you to Ciera and Erin. Erin, your generosity and sharing your practice and your art with us today. Thank you to everyone who joined us as well.
Yes,
Feel free to stay in touch with 21C Chicago. Like I mentioned, this is a monthly series along with some other programming. So please get in touch with us via social media, via our email newsletter. And of course, if you'd like to come by and see our current exhibition entitled This We Believe, check that link in the chat box, and we are open and ready to have you book a reservation with us to see that exhibition. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. Happy Friday, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Friday.
Have some sunshine.